Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you're new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. If you'd like to join the community debate, then go to nathanoakley.com and check out the Flat Earth Debate forum. Most importantly, if you'd like to join this discussion right now, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Chocolate Saint, Sleeping Warrior, Flatzoid, and 10th Man. Very good to have you all.
Hey.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good
Right.
morning. Good morning.
Let's rattle through housekeeping, Nathan.
Where in the hell is Georgie fucking Moussa? Right, let's do some housekeeping.
Well, let's tailor let's tailor the answers to housekeeping in a George Moussa style. Just as a tip of the cap to that little idiot that thinks he's won. But just to emphasize to our audience what's really going on here. So let's deal with question number one, please.
Where in the world is Georgie fucking Moussa? Is that question one?
He's busy stabbing Craig's eye with a compass, and Craig thinks he's being friends with him.
Right, any signs of Earth curvature?
See, there is no Earth curvature, but you can think of it as curvature.
That's a very good answer. Any signs of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
No, there is no evidence of axial rotation, but you can think of it as axial rotation.
Very good.
I'm going to struggle to get through this. What question are we on? Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force. That was a quote, by the way.
It's magic.
It's
Magic without magic.
Okay. Oh dear. Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without a container?
You can't have gas pressure without a container, but you can think of it as a vacuum next to gas pressure.
That's good. Any evidence of the self-perpetuating molten iron core? At the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth.
Self-perpetuating molten iron core, but you can think of it as a molten iron core.
Oh, George, you're a good laugh.
Shout out to Georgie Booster.
Any evidence of the R value? Oh God, stop. I'm gonna have to wipe my tears. I'm just going on mute for a sec.
There is no evidence of a radius, but you can think of it as a radius.
Good job, Anthony.
Right,
Yeah.
this one you're going to struggle to
The shoe
spin right.
fits.
Hold on, this should bring us right back on track. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Son.
There is no evidence of a sun, but you can think of it as a 93 million mile sun.
Nah, that didn't make no sense.
It's not literally a sun.
Yeah.
It's not literally a sun, but you can think of it as literally being a sun. Nah, don't work.
Yeah.
That's the worst example. At least we left the worst till last day.
Go on.
Right, that concludes the housekeeping. Very good fun. So,
Unbelievable.
10th Man has watched, and Anthony and I have not watched, but have been given a synopsis by QE, who has obviously watched the interview with George Moussa. So the first question I suppose I've got is, wasn't this supposed to take a month or something to come out?
Right, yeah. I mean, he has took his month, right? To be fair to him, he did say May the 20th, and he's done May the 20th. Fair play. The issue that he was supposed to be addressing was when Einstein brought out his theory of general relativity, how did it interact with Newton's currently accepted principles? Did it add to, furnish, support, refine, or did it snap the wand in two the way George Moussa wrote? That was literally the question that he was addressing. Now, I haven't seen it yet. However, everybody that's been in touch with me is basically saying, yeah, he's kind of shot himself in the foot a little bit, but represented it as a win. And I'm like, really? So what's happened is George Moussa is quoted as saying, gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force. No, you can't. It's either a force or it's not. If it's a force, it supports Newton. If it's not a force, it doesn't support Newton. End of sentence, end of paragraph. I win. What's his name? Fight the Flat Earth doesn't win. And it's not even about me winning or Fight the Flat Earth winning. It's about the transition between Newton over to Einstein and what that transition was. Because if the transition was similar, comparable, supported, or whatever, refinement, then there's a contradiction there in the sciences, because one of them is based on 3 dimensions, one of them is based on 4. They're a paradigm shift, literally a paradigm shift. So you can't really have them supporting each other when they're not actually supporting each other, they're different. So the best way to describe it is a force is Newton, and gravity, according to Einstein, was when you get your bed sheet, get 4 people in the corners and you pull it taut, then get a big fuck off bowling ball and stick it in the middle and it'll sag. Well, the curvature of space-time is when you spin a marble all the way around the outside edge and it pulls itself towards the middle because there's a sag in the bed sheet. That hole, that falling in towards the Earth is what Einstein describes as gravity. Now, that works at interplanetary level because it kind of makes sense. It removes the element of force. And that's why, of course, Moussa says that it snaps the wand of attraction in two. However, on our day-to-day level, when we see a microphone dropped onto the floor, it doesn't really make any sense. Let's be honest, it's not compatible. So it kind of explains the planets in the solar system to some degree, but it's got no practical application for it whatsoever in the real world. So that's the reason why I can confidently assert that Craig has had his eye stabbed with a compass by George Moussa, but they've done it in such a way that they've presented it as though it was like a victory, a win, a support, even though he's been stabbed in the face repeatedly. So it's like when I said, when your mate nicks your car for an hour and razzes round the estate, burns all your fuel and puts your car back, but hangs your keys up for you. And he says, thanks for nicking your car, thanks for stealing your car for an hour, mate. But don't worry, I've put the car back on the drive for you. It's all okay. And he does it with a smile on his face to trivialize what he's done. That's what's really happened here. It seems. I haven't seen it yet, but and the 10th man, you've seen it.
No.
What did you think?
Well, let me just paraphrase the example. So hold on, just before. Sorry, 10th man. So taking your car is not legal, but you can think of it as being legal.
Yeah, because I put the car back for you and I've just thanked you. It's like having sex with your wife kind of thing. I've just had sex with your wife, but don't worry, we're friends. It's fine. It's like, what? It's like you can't. It's doublespeak. You can't have one and then claim the other, and that seems to be the case with what's happened here. Come on, let's hear from 10th man. You've seen it. What's your views?
Yeah, I watched it up until about the 9-minute mark, and it was just so flat in the sense of there was no debating. They were contradicting themselves on everything. He's basically saying if I use the moon and the earth and use their version of gravity between the two objects, he's saying there's nothing in between whatsoever. There's no force in between. But to a high degree of approximation, we can use Newton's calculation still to prove that there is. But he's saying it's magic. He even says that there's nothing pulling in between. There's no force, literally. But it's magic. This is a science guy?
And he said that numerous times. Numerous times.
Look, Superman is real. You can think of him that way, okay? Just so it's clear.
Well, he also said there's no such thing as a solid.
Hey, right the hand.
When did he say that? At what minute? Did he say that after the 9-minute mark, or because I missed that one?
Yeah. I actually watched the whole video. It was a waste of time.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm sure that's not the case. I'm sure it wasn't a waste of time.
So funny.
It just didn't prove their point. and proved our points quite admirably. So yeah, it will be definitely quote mined. It definitely wasn't a waste of time. And it was a waste of time if you were hoping it proved something for the sphere.
I listened to it twice because it was so funny.
There you go. Told you it went a waste of time.
So,
So
Chocolate,
let's put this in the context, right?
Oh,
There's
hold on,
two
just before you do.
contexts here.
Hold on. Go on, Chocolate. What did you make of it?
The amount of times he said that gravity is not a force, literally not a force, but we can just act like it's a force, and the amount of times that he called gravity magical. I mean, it was such nonsense that I couldn't believe that I had to watch it twice. I was just like, I have to listen to this crap again.
Hey, P.
And then Fight the Flat Earth sitting there thinking that he's winning. I'm just like, oh my God.
Hey, P.
It's too funny.
Can you hear us?
Yeah.
To me, the funniest was when he said he's going straight to the force, to the source of things. He doesn't realize it's not the source. The source would be going to Newton himself.
Well, the other thing to ask is, this was written. The whole point of this video, from Fight the Flat Earth's personal point of view, was to try and discredit me in some way, try and prove me wrong. The bigger picture is, this is the first time we've had somebody that's writing in science, writing for journals, publications, whatever, and it's the first time we've had an interaction. Now, really, what should happen is, Moussa should listen to what we say and acknowledge and accept that what we're saying is legitimate criticism of the position, which is you've been double speaking. What also should happen is Moussa there should be a dialogue that opens up with Moussa, and I'm going to try and approach the guy. He probably won't speak to me, but I'm going to ask him, will he have a conversation with me? Because I believe that a guy that writes in the capacity that he wrote, but double speaks that much, is a guy that is either, well, I'm not going to say what I think he is personally, but what I'm going to say is it doesn't help science.
Hello,
Hey,
Michael Newhagen.
Can you hear us?
Hey, what's up, guys? Yeah, I can hear you.
Good to have you
Just
also.
about
Hello,
getting
Arwin.
your ass.
Hello.
Yeah, so a
Hey,
guy
guys,
that's
hear me?
writing.
Yeah, we hear,
Yeah,
hear
we can hear you,
you.
dude.
You seem like you're good with the mute button as well, so I like you already.
Oh, yeah, I know. I've been watching you guys' show since, like, day one.
Cool. Very nice to have you. Sorry, Anthony, you carry on.
Yeah, so the bottom line is this, right? If Moussa writes for science and he's writing with such a level of doublespeak, and he's prepared to support the baller, Craig, in the context that Craig's approached him with, it makes, I would think that a guy in his position, if he's prepared to engage in this discussion, would also allow a conversation back. That must be John, and he's got out of bed on purpose because he's watched the interview as well.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah. He's gonna
No, it wasn't.
destroy
It wasn't.
So what I'm going to ask everybody is, bearing in mind that Craig's personal opinion on this is to try and discredit me at all costs. Is there anybody that thinks that I got shown wrong by Craig? Was I discredited with the view that Einstein replaced Newtonian principles with a completely different system that is not comparable? It didn't support, furnish, refine, whatever his words were. I was right. Does anybody disagree that I was right?
Yes, I do.
In the context of this discussion with Fight the
Yes.
Flat Earth, Darwin, yeah?
Probably, but it's only a minor point that he's just wanking
Have you
off.
watched the video?
No,
Right, so
but
you
what you
can't.
just described, I've objected to that because I say that he didn't do that at all. Even though you found that one quote, well, was really
Sure,
nice.
but-
It didn't actually happen. He just speculated
know,
more on a
Alwyn,
causal
Alwyn.
relation to it.
Owen, this is in relation to a video that you've not seen. So let's just hang fire. The conjecture that follows, we can deal with that in a different paragraph. But in this paragraph, we're talking about whether Craig Fight the Flat Earth video, from Craig's perspective, was set up specifically to try and discredit me because I was so badly wrong and I was ridiculous and he was going to expose it and all this. The question is, from Craig's perspective, has his mission been achieved or not?
His mission
Anybody
was
think
to
he has
prove.
succeeded?
His mission
Not
was
even a little bit.
His
He
mission
made
was to,
himself look stupid.
his mission was to prove that gravity was a force. Correct?
No. His mission was to prove that I was wrong and he was going to destroy me. The bigger picture, of course, is what you've just said. But Craig's attack is based on person. He wants it to be personal, right? Has he succeeded?
Who cares? So Einstein's nonsense superseded Newtonian nonsense. They're both nonsense, but nevertheless, one is pseudo-Riemannian 4 space, the other is Euclidean 3 space. You said it already. They don't mathematically work together. They're not derivative of each other. They're not based off each other. They're totally separate. One superseded the other. We all know this. The fact that this dumb fat fuck Craig didn't know it, and he's had to have a reasonably educated double speaker telling him it, is just kind of besides the point. Einsteinian bollocks replaced Newtonian bollocks. That's the bottom line here. So was his point that you were going to be smashed in any way realised, Craig? That is, no. Is Einsteinian bollocks replacing the Newtonian bollocks? Yes.
You know what, Anthony? I didn't see your initial debate with Craig, Fight the Flat Earth, now that I know his name. But I did see this video pop up last night, and it was said to be done to take you down. So I said, okay, this is going to be interesting. I'll go watch it. So like I said, I only went through 9 minutes, and it was just like, what happened was his attempt was to take you down by having George Musser there on the show to invalidate your points. But what happened was they both drank from the hemlock and poisoned their own arguments.
10th man, if you didn't know the background to it, George Moussa was the citation that I used against Craig's position originally, because George Moussa said that Einstein snaps the wand in two by showing that it was the curvature of space-time and not a magical invisible force that was responsible for gravity. So and it was all to do with that line. Now,
yeah, but George Musser,
that guy.
But George Musser,
why is he so significant?
Hang on,
because it's George Moussa, the guy that Craig's talking to, is the guy that wrote the article that I was referencing.
But
somebody that wrote an article. Right. So somebody that wrote an article basically.
Arwin, not knowing anything about this, you're going to hijack this point when you don't know anything about it. You're going to try and find the backstory to the entire thing. That's not fair. Come on. Go on, tell me.
The guy George Moussa is the guy that I cited in the article.
I was trying to clear the airways for 10th man.
Yeah, go on.
But Riley, you have been basically showing that.
That's your fault. I'm blaming Anthony for that. You caused that. Arwin.
Sorry.
Go ahead, 10th man.
Yeah, George Musser ends up saying right around the 9-minute mark that it is magical. So they just drank from the poison themselves. They're just falling on the sword. It's ridiculous.
What's even better though is how many times, like 10th man is right. The amount of times he called gravity magical is ridiculous. But the amount of times he tried to reiterate that gravity is not actually a force is beyond comprehension. I mean, it makes it even worse for this Newtonian crap, I feel.
That was the original point, right? That gravity wasn't a force. That was the point Sleeping Warrior was trying to make. And it didn't reaffirm that point. How did Greg realize?
And then he tried to circle back because there were a couple of times he said, oh, gravity is not a force. And you could kind of see Fight the Flat Earth look a little nervous. So he tried to circle it back. Oh, it's not a force, but we can act like it's one, right? We can use it in our calculations and stuff. And George Musser was like, yeah, it's not literally a force, but yeah, you could definitely use it for mathematics and stuff. It's like, what?
Here's what he said exactly. He said, perfectly valid for the application of Newton's laws as this force is operating, at the same time saying there is no force operating.
Which he himself said that Newton had all these problems with the laws that he came up with. It's like, what? Oh my God, it's great.
But then when he was talking about the law of gravitation and acceleration, he in the next sentence says, between the moon and the earth, there's nothing there. There's no there's nothing.
There's no force reaching in between the masses and interacting. There's nothing there. There's no force.
But then how do tides happen?
Yeah.
Well, then Einstein made it all fall perpetually around an orbit.
How do tides happen? Who cares? It's like when you in the 24/7 Flat Earth Discord thing last night. There was a guy on there talking about he wanted to know about how the equinox works on a flat Earth. And I said, the equinox. I said, why would you want to know about that? He said, because it's impossible on a flat Earth. I said, all right, okay. I said, so what is it? What is the equinox? And I got him to explain it. I said, right, and what causes the movement of the sun in the sky and over the day, sunrise and sunset? What causes sunrise and sunset? And he said, Earth turn. I said, right. I said, can you prove that the Earth's turning? And he was like, I said, right. I said, let's prove that the Earth's turning before we have a conversation about the equinox. Because if we can't prove that the Earth's turning, whatever's causing the equinox, the phenomena that we observe, that then becomes an issue, doesn't it? Because you're assuming that we are turning, and that's causing the thing that you're seeing. But we're saying, so it's like when we have the gas pressure argument. Like, let's not argue about the pressure gradient. We know that that's there, and that's not even debate. It's not an issue for us. No, it's not even contentious on either side. They think it's contentious, but we know it's not. Let's have the conversation about how you have the gas pressure in the first place, in the same way that let's prove that the Earth's turning before we address equinox. Because you can't just say equinox, therefore Earth's a ball, if you can't prove that the Earth's turning, because you need that to prove that the equinox is a thing. Otherwise, it's a phenomena that's unexplained, and we don't know what's causing whatever it is, because it could be something else. That's why we need to establish the base cause, and that's why we have scientific method. And if you want to go against scientific method, plan a walk, talking to you, then you become the public enemy number one, because we're saying we want to see this science, and we want to see proof that the Earth's turning. Let's not have an argument within that point. Let's deal with that point first, eh?
I'm going to quote a bit from from John's complete dissection of George and Fight the Flat Earth. So this is, I think it's the only one he actually time-stamped. So there's a couple of timestamps in here. I don't know if you want to go and play them, you feel free. But this is at the 8-minute 40 mark. So I'll just read it as it's typed. George Fuckwit Moussa, quote, Einstein came along and said, what could cause this force or apparent force, end quote. Then Craig, 11 minutes 44, quote, we still don't fully know the complete cause of gravity, end quote. Georgie Fuckwit Moussa, quote, oh no, not at all, end quote. And then he says, John says, what the fuck? Real actual scientific theories identify the cause. That's their primary mission in life. Priceless, shaking my fucking head. Two bozos are abject fuckwits. By the way, you'd both fail 5th grade general science.
Let's not forget that George Moussa's doctorate thesis was on the convection currents of Venus. Well, I mean, bearing in mind that our housekeeping question is, how do you prove a molten iron core for Earth? How the hell are you going to prove the convection currents for the mantle of Venus, other than in bullshit science, theoretical science, right? So really, we should put a housekeeping question in. How do you prove the convection currents in Venus as a tip of the cap to George?
Yeah, but I know the answer to that. It's caused by unicorn farts. I mean,
yeah,
unicorn farts aren't real, but you can think of them as real.
I think what we're doing really is, in the bigger picture, the bigger scheme of things, we're beginning to teach people how to distinguish real science from bullshit fiction-based pseudoscience. And if we can do that, that is where we're going to win, because we get criticized for not doing any science or being science deniers or whatever. Funny, when we start looking at the science and we start working out what is supposed to be science, they don't like it, because they start saying things like, it's semantics, Riley. But when it matters to them, they're really focused on the words. Like Brenda was on the other day, and she had a definition up that supported her. And she wanted she wanted to stick to it religiously, right? But when we bring up something like from George Moussa, perhaps, that snaps the wand in two, it becomes semantic. Isn't it funny how they move the goalposts against us when it suits them, when the meaning of words is important for them to win their argument or lose their argument? They move the goalposts.
Words and their meanings. Semantics, you mean?
Yeah, words have meanings, and semantics is not a dirty word. It is the difference between bullshit and real.
So just to round out the bit with Georgie fucking Moussa. So it's not a win, Craig, but you can think of it as a win.
Yeah, and so can all your gay little subs that hold your willy.
The win was getting him on. Like, as long as he got Musser on, I feel like he's in his mind he won. Doesn't matter what they talk about. Doesn't matter that Musser will literally go on and verbatim say gravity is not a force, but he got him on.
Numerous times.
I agree.
Numerous times he said that nonsense too.
I agree. The win is getting somebody that writes in science professionally into the discussion. That is a massive win, because nobody else has managed to do that. Now it'll bite him in the arse, which I'm not really bothered about. Craig will come and go, but ultimately George Moussa is the first writer that's come into the discussion, and we should praise that and encourage it and support it, because we haven't had anybody else really, other than like the odd passing comment from the likes of Neil deGrasse Tyson while he mocks us or whatever. It's the first interaction that we've had really, and credit should be given for that, because this is the downfall of the Earth in the long term.
Can I just give one more quote? So I've got a big shout out to Quantum Eraser for this dissection. It's absolutely brilliant. Without even watching the video, I can just go through and chuckle along. Georgie fucking Moussa. The thing about Newton's law, you can't take it literally, end quote. Laughing my fucking ass off. So we can't take equations literally anymore, Georgie. Thanks. Priceless. I like his little annotations that John puts in.
Yep, he definitely said that. Can't take it literally. It's not literally a force. He said that numerous times. Like, I'm like, what am I listening to?
Yeah, that's when I stopped listening.
Force is just a side effect of the bending of space-time. Come on, guys.
It's a law, but don't take it literally.
Yeah.
They got to a place, and I just wrote some notes down here. He says it did not propagate and this is quote for quote, did not propagate the distance in between the objects, meaning the moon and the earth. It's a magical component. It's supernatural, but he tried to separate himself from animism by underlying science. So first he's saying it's magical, then he says, oops, I can't say that. So we did it through underlying science, but then he goes back and says with that underlying science, it's not literal. Where was the science?
I think we need to conclude that the bigger point here, and forget about Craig and fact the flat Earth, is it seems to be that gravity, the topic of gravity, is heavily obfuscated with bullshit. That so long as we're arguing about gravity in the concept, they're happy. But when we realize that both interpretations, Newton's or Einstein's, are basically bullshit, by even having unless they can prove it, unless they can prove that there is something that's pulling us down, it's basically pseudoscience. Because we need that experimental application. We need to see it demonstrated. And if it can't be demonstrated other than in maths or in some kind of concept that you imagine in your mind, then it's pseudoscience, because that's why we have scientific method.
Absolutely
weren't we talking last week about acceleration?
Yeah, but is that the real plain truth?
No, I'm just trying to figure out if there's nothing in between.
Hello, what ho?
Yeah, whenever we're talking about mass, we're either talking about the mole or the inertia. That's their two definitions for it.
Right. So if there's nothing in between two objects that are supposed to have a gravitational pull, and then they want to talk about acceleration, how could they talk about acceleration if there's nothing in between them to measure as acceleration?
None of this is to be taken literally.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
George Moussa. Great guy.
He's a flat earther.
You know what's funny about that? He actually complimented flat earthers in the beginning. Like, oh, I'm so, it's nice to see people interested in this topic and this subject. And it's like, and then right after that, no, gravity's not a force.
The thing about Newton's law, you can't take it literally. End quote. George Moussa. I
think we still need to answer the housekeeping questions in that style, so that basically people that ever ask us why do we answer it like that, we can regurgitate the story legitimately and spread the good gospel word, eh?
No, I don't know. I don't want to confuse things too much. I mean, I'm trying to talk Arwin out of, using the sarcastic rebuttal of the opponent when we've got a devastating point that we win. Because it just, why not just state it? If the obvious outcome of a point you're making is the Earth is flat, why not say that rather than go, oh, well, it's because it's a ball. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm trying to talk you out of that. Why not keep it completely concise? Yeah, it's a bit more deadpan, but it's about the information being concise and to the point. And if the conclusion is a sarcastic opponent's rebuttal played by a devil's advocate on the panel, then the information gets diluted. So for me, it's just state it like it is. In this instance, gravity that they claim is nonsense. That's the bottom line here. We're talking about magic. Unicorn farts. That's what they're discussing. And while they, as 10th Man puts it, violate the law of non-contradiction, they're patting each other on the back. Well, this is cognitive dissonance at its finest. Wonderful. Great. I can't wait to watch it.
If I may, I have a theory about your unicorn farts and how they could potentially enable gas pressure without a container. Would you like to hear it?
Sure. I mean, it's not real, but we can think of it as real.
Yeah, it's basically just like how the molten iron core came into existence. It's sort of similar to that train of thought. So what happened is unicorns were the original first creatures that came out of that puddle of ooze, or they just crashed on planets with meteors. They were always there, I don't know. But yeah, when they were alive, they farted. And those farts don't disintegrate. And they have a unique property that they have a very light density, but a high surface tension, almost like a liquid. So what it does is it basically travels to the surface of any gases available to the outer space, but then at some point the surface tension becomes too high for it to basically stretch out further, and thus it becomes a gaseous natural dome over the ball Earth. What do you think?
You can't have surface tension with a gas. There's no connections between.
You can with unicorn farts.
And no, unless you're saying unicorn farts are actually liquid.
Yeah,
so
it
the
is.
dome is
Hold on. I've just solved the plot hole narrative problem. Hold on. I've just solved the plot hole problem.
It is transparent, but it does seem to function like a liquid.
That's what I thought. See, that's exactly what I thought, Arwin. That's exactly what I thought. They say you say fart, and now it's not to be taken literally. It actually is a liquid, and that liquid rises up because it's less dense than all the other gases, and because it's got those strong bonds, it forms that surface tension, and that's how you have gas pressure without a container.
Yes, you get it. We finally solved it.
See?
We can go back to the globe again.
Right, put that shit on the Discovery Channel and pay me £1 million.
Yep.
Shout out to P Mars.
Shout out retracted.
Somebody asked me why.
Why?
Well, why would I shout out P Mars?
Yeah, why would
it's
you shout out
because
P-Mars?
somebody, I don't know who it was, but somebody added me to a particular hangout that I had no interest in going in. There's like 100 people in there, and it just like it litters the hangout feed with a load of like memes, jokes, casual conversation. I don't know whose it is. I'm not interested. I was just about to leave, and I saw P Mars join, and it says, "You've got someone blocked in this hangout, and he can't join." And I was like, "Oh, hang on a minute. What hangout's that relating to?" Checked out. Check which one it was. It's the one I've just been added to. So P Mars is trying to get in, right? I was just about to leave, and I'm now not leaving just to stop P Mars from getting in. So shout out for the guy that added me to a hangout I didn't ask to be added to, and shout out to P that's desperately trying to get in the background. And each time I get a notify say P Mars is trying to get in.
Thank you, Warrior. That was my black book.
Hey P Mars, I have the control.
Did you say is in your black book?
Yes.
P Mars.
Yeah.
No, that's physics.
Yeah, I know he said it.
So, what do we do now then? What can we talk about? Hey, it might be worth talking about Planner Walk. He's released a video in the last 24 hours, I think, and basically he's trying to do what what John, what's his name, Gem Panda does to John to Quantum Eraser. In that he attributes scientific method personally to the Quantum Eraser's like very own unique scientific method, right? He's trying to do this to me with the independent variable. And he doesn't want independent variables to be manipulated by the observer or the experimenter because he realizes how narrow that actually is. But it doesn't change the fact that that's what you have to do in scientific method to prove the cause and effect relationship. He's telling his subs that you can have 3 or 4 different causes in an experiment, and that's why independent variables don't have to be manipulated by yeah, that's what he's saying.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he's saying that you can have 3 or 4 independent variables.
Who is this? Who are we talking about?
Planner Walk.
Who the hell is that?
Some dweeb. He's like that Hith, that HIITH guy.
Oh God.
Yeah, he's like him. He's a nice enough guy, but he's dumb as a box of frogs, right? What he's trying to do is distort the boundaries, the limitations of scientific method to allow him to be able to be a pseudoscientist. And we're saying, scientific method is quite clear. I gave 10 citations for the independent variable in my egg test. And what he's done to counter it is applied philosophical approaches. And I'm like, dude, I gave you 10 citations for the independent variable. They all say pretty much the same thing. Okay, you can chop and change between them all. And some of them will say this and not the other thing, or it'll say the other thing, but not the first thing. But fundamentally, that's why I put 10 in. So you could get an overall appearance of them, right? I wasn't cherry picking. I was just doing what science tells us. And they all basically say the same 3 things. The independent variable is the presumed cause. You've got to manipulate it. And that by doing so proves the cause and effect relationship. And they don't like that. So they've got to he's pinning it against me personally, saying that I've got my own interpretation of the independent variable. And I'm saying, that's science, bro. He didn't present a single piece of evidence to support his philosophical approach. That philosophical approach is pseudoscience. He doesn't realize it. He thinks he's sounding all intelligent. And he even got something at the end of it called Riley's Rooster. And I'm like, right, you are distorting the boundaries for scientific method. You are trying to allow for shit that we're saying is not allowable. You are the antithesis of science. He doesn't realize it. He just wants to win. And I'm like, I've messaged him privately on Discord, and I'll read it. I said, dude, your latest video presented zero supported evidence for your views against the 10 cited definitions that I gave for the independent variable. You supported your position with pseudoscience, but don't even seem to realize it. You have to pick an IV based on scientific method. It requires the variable to be manipulated by you. It's the presumed cause, and it's like that because an experiment is a hypothesis test, which fundamentally establishes a cause and an effect relationship. That's the goal, cause and effect. You told people that there is a correlation is okay because there can be many variables. No, that's a complex hypothesis and does not show a cause and effect relationship, therefore falls outside scientific method. It's where the phrase correlation is not causation comes from. You've misled your audience with false statements relating to scientific method. I'm saddened to see that there is zero scientific research or application to your video, just your own personal views based on your philosophy. You should take this video down. And that's where we're at. So
right. I'm going to play out your. Sorry, just before you go, I'm going to play out these citations, if that's good by you, Anthony.
Yes.
From Colorado Science and Engineering Fair, the independent variable is the variable which an experimenter deliberately manipulates in an experiment.
From Penn State University, there should be 3 types of variables in every experiment: the dependent, independent, and the controlled. The independent variable is what is varied during the experiment. It is what the investigator thinks will affect the dependent variable.
From explorable.com, the independent variable. This is what you change in order to provide a result. The dependent variable. This is what you are measuring.
From award-winning awardco.com, an independent variable is the variable that is changed or controlled in a scientific experiment to test the effects on the dependent variable.
From the University of North Carolina. In an experiment, the independent variable is the variable that is varied or manipulated by the researcher, and the dependent variable is the response that is measured. An independent variable is the presumed cause, and the dependent variable is the presumed effect. In experiments, the independent variable is the variable that is controlled and manipulated by the experimenter, whereas the dependent variable is not manipulated. Instead, the dependent variable is observed or measured for variation as a presumed result of the variation in the independent variable.
According to the GCSE citation in experiments, variables are used to help determine the cause and the effect. An independent variable can be thought of as the cause of change. A dependent variable is what is affected by the independent variable. There can only be one independent variable and one dependent variable in an experiment. Everything else that can impact the experiment must be kept constant or controlled. These are known as controls. The independent variable is controlled by you. In other words, you can manipulate the independent variable during an experiment to discover what effect it has on the other variables. This is the cause.
From practicalphysics.org, that's the Institute of Physics. The independent variable is the variable that is deliberately changed by the experimenter. The dependent variable, an outcome variable that is measured each time the independent variable is changed.
From the University of Southern California, the dependent variable is the presumed effect. The independent variable is systematically manipulated by the investigator. It is the presumed cause.
From Indiana University, independent variables are felt to cause some change in the dependent variables. They are manipulated by the researcher. Dependent variables are felt to be affected by independent variables. They are measured by the experimenter and are normally responses of the subjects.
By sciencing.com, the independent variable is the variable that the scientist changes during the experiment. Think of the experiment as a cause and effect exercise. The independent variable is the cause factor.
There we have it. You've got to wiggle it. Wiggle it proves the cause and effect relationship. And the experimenter has to do it. So it's not me that's being narrow. That's what science says. And when we apply that science, you got dickheads like Planner Walk that's trying to say that it's my own narrow interpretation. And he redefines it using philosophical approaches and applying zero evidence to support his position. And in effect, he becomes the public enemy. He is the pseudoscientist that we're targeting because there is no science for a sphere Earth in a heliocentric model. All the science states the opposite. It's only when you go into pseudoscience can heliocentrism really exist. And even then, it's not really. It's fakes. It's not real.
Yeah, I saw 10 citations, and I think 2 of them had S's at the end. I think that's why most ballers get confused with independent variables and variables.
Yeah, but the thing is, even if it says S at the end, independent variables isn't referring to one experiment with independent variables in it. It's referring
Any
to all the
intelligent person would
experiments.
know that, but apparently ballers are all retarded. So, and
Well,
as to everything.
It got stepped on. It's worth clarifying that. So Anthony and I discussed this the other day. There's only one context where independent variables make sense when you're talking about a collection of experiments, each with their own independent variable, and therefore you have independent variables for individual experiments that you are performing. It doesn't mean that you have more than one variable in an experiment. That's not the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's what ballers get confused about.
Words have got meaning in science. Anne-Marie Hemenstein, PhD, she says that words mean stuff. Ballers, if they need to, they will argue that blue means red if it suits their narrative. Whereas me and you will go, blue means blue, dickhead. It doesn't mean red. You can't have, yeah, but purple's a shade of blue, isn't it? It's a bit of red in purple. And we're like, no, dickhead. Stop muddying the waters. If it snaps the wand in two, it snaps the wand in two, right? That's what it literally says. And everybody else that I've found, I haven't found anything that supported the idea that in some way Einstein complemented Newton. Now, I'm sure they can go and cherry pick something, and that's the in phrase right now. But the fact is, I gave 10 citations for what an independent variable is, and he didn't give one. And I'm like, you are the fake scientist that we're trying to push against.
The thing about Newton's law, you can't take it literally. Quote, George Moussa.
Yeah. Go on, 10th man. What was your question?
George Musser, at the beginning of this video, and you know more about him than most of us, wasn't he the head of a scientific journal, and then now he has a different role?
He was a lead writer or some kind of writer for Scientific American, and he wrote his PhD thesis on convection currents of Venus.
Yes,
we can't even prove convection currents of Earth, let alone Venus.
Well, listen, he says that on this video that everyone could go back and watch. So he's admitting that he's had this role of this journal, and if someone's watching him, you're going to say, this guy's smart. This guy knows what he's talking about. And then he says all the stuff that we've covered. And then he says, well, Einstein came in and he's trying to explain in this video, snap the wand or snapping the wand. It's just so funny that's the terminology, because he uses the word magic and magical so many times. And when you think about a wand and magic,
that's because he's coined the phrase.
The wand is a literal wand. It's literally magic he's talking about.
Yeah. So before you answer me, Anthony, here's my scenario that I want all of us to have in our mind. Imagine if he was still the head of that scientific journal and he was asked to come to one of these universities that we just put the citations up, and he said the stuff he says on that video. How would the class react to him if he was to say magic and no force, not literal? What would happen?
Well, I think Quantum Eraser summed it up. He said they'd fail 5th grade general science, and I would expect the students to be able to recognise that.
But they didn't, despite the flat earth.
Go ahead, bro.
But Fight the Flat Earth didn't notice it. So why would anybody else?
Well, because what they've done is he's presented it in such a way where he's just stole your car, He's razzed it round for an hour. He's burnt all your fuel, and he's put the keys back on. He's put the car back on the drive where it was parked. He's hung the keys up, and as he's walked back in, and you've caught him on the way back in, he smiled at you and shook your hand and said, "Oh, thanks very much, mate. I've just burnt all your fuel and smashed your car around the estate for the last hour, but don't worry, I've put it back on the drive and everything's great." And he's done it in such an affable way that you can't possibly lose your temper with him. That's what has really happened.
Anthony's
if you look at,
hold on. Anthony's example is literal. Sorry, he's not
Yeah.
literal. Is not
Yeah.
literal. I've balled that up now. Thanks. Anthony's example is not literal, but you can think of it as literal.
Well, I did only watch about 9 minutes of it, and I went back to these quotes that were so crazy, and I just focused on Fight the Flat Earth's eyeballs as Musser was saying it, and they were rolling in his head because he was saying, "No, don't say that."
That's the only thing I want to see is his facial whilst that's being said. I'm not bothered about anything more now.
Let's
John's
get it
giving
up.
me the snot. Listen.
What's the timestamp?
I just want to.
What's the timestamp? And you can play it, Anthony. Just the visuals of it.
Have you still got it on screen?
I haven't. No. I mean, if 10th
All right,
man
I'll dig it out. Give me 2 minutes.
Well,
I'll find
I
it.
would
What's the
start
timestamp?
at the 5:50 mark and just go to the 8 minute or so mark. There's plenty of stuff right there.
Just give me a minute. I'll find it. I'll find that exact moment. Because Craig will realise. Oh, he's done another. Oh, he's done another one since. Oh, let's have a look. So, I'll find it. Give me a minute.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that Slick is not here. I kind of don't like him.
I was gonna say that's the same look that Fight the Flat Earth had when you and him were talking about the Felix Baumgartner jump, and you were like, "Yeah, he should slow down when he enters the denser medium." And Fight the Flat Earth's like, "No, he would keep accelerating because of gravity." And then it just showed exactly that he slowed down, and he was just like, "Yeah, but well."
Yeah, he got bum smacked then, didn't he? And he knows he did as well.
Oh, that was great. But his face, his face, you just watch the face. And that's like, somebody was talking about how they like to do this in person. And I feel like, like I like to do voice over text because it's harder to like get our points across in text. And in person, like if you tell them like, "So you think we're on a floating rock," it's so much easier to visualize that the Earth is not a floating rock in person.
Do you know what's even more?
Just watch his face every time Musser says gravity is not a force. Just watch that.
So this is what I was just about to say. Check this out. Oh shit, have I done the wrong thing there? Hang on, let me just go back to this. I might have just reshit. Right, application window, this one. Right, so can you see this oath on screen right now?
Yeah, it's up.
So what I've done to find the bit that I'm looking for, I've opened up the transcript and I've typed in "gravity is not a force." 5 times it's been said in that conversation. 5. So how is it possible that Einstein refined or supported if he's literally saying the opposite 5 times? I don't know that he said it 5 times, but I can't imagine Craig said it 5 times.
Yeah, he said it 5 times. That sounds accurate to me.
So if gravity's not a force, right? How could Einstein replace Newton if it's not a force? Because Newton's work was it based on being a mechanical force of attraction, right? This is nonsense, Craig. Come on, you should be instead of "suck it, Lily," it should be "I'm sorry, Lily. I'm sorry, sleeping warrior." That's what it should be.
Magic.
Right, so I'm looking for the bit where he says, "But you can think of it as a force." Is that the bit I'm looking for, Nick?
Riley, type in magic.
Could it be magic now?
Why did Fight the Flat Earth pin Quantum Eraser's comment?
I don't know. George missed his actual. I don't know why would this is.
It's like they're dangling it in our face. It's like they know. It's almost like they know, and they're just seeing how far they can take us before we get so frustrated and yell.
No, it's not us.
When I was listening to it, that's
hold
what
on.
I
I've got to
thought.
correct that. I'm sorry to correct that right the hand. It's not us that they're taking by the hand. It's themselves. I'm completely at peace with this, man. None of these ballers are taking me anywhere. They're taking themselves on this merry dance.
Yep. Not literally, but we can think of it that way.
It's crazy.
I think this is the bit. Let's hear this bit.
But I just want to agree with Chocolate. So yeah, it's not literally a merry dance, but you can think of it literally as a merry dance.
Right. So let's hear this. Interrupt me, Nathan, if it's not coming through, okay?
Here was to really fill in that mechanism. He explained how is it that objects, massive objects, exert what seems to be a force on one another. Now, literally, it's not a force. So the thing about Newton's laws, you can't take it literally, but Newton himself didn't. Newton had various ideas on this, but generally thought that Newton did not take his own law that literally, that there is a force reaching from one object out to another. However, you can act as if there were one.
Really?
Like an aberration.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to watch this.
Well, that's exactly an aberration then. That's
So
exactly
actually,
what he says.
So that we all heard what he said, but the whole point, I'm going to mute it now, but the whole point was to see what his facial reaction is. So let's look at his facial reaction whilst he's talking. Smiling, acknowledging, smiling. Come on, I'm looking for a face drop. Where is it? Come on, Craig, do the face drop. Still smiling. So he's literally he's holding his willy then, isn't he? So he hasn't even listened. He's not listening. He's just in awe. That's what's happening. So he is brainwashed. He's in awe at this point, and he's just like, George, I could inhale your farts.
With the bookshelf behind him. Like, they're playing a part, man. Who has a bookshelf behind them with books?
No Simon Dan. He does that.
I don't think that's the strongest argument, who has a bookshelf behind you. But with that, I'll say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who've joined us in the live audience for hopefully sharing, subscribing, smashing the super chat and all that good stuff. Also, of course, a massive thank you to all of today's debating panel for making this live debate possible. Be sure to stay tuned if you're watching on the Nathan Oakley premiering stream, as there will be an after show to follow. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!